Hey everyone, it's Flynn Patrick once again, and in this video, we will be covering a player who I think is the biggest sleeper prospect in the 2019 NBA draft class, and I think as of right now, he is the #1 point guard prospect in the 2019 NBA draft, and hardly anybody has heard about him. First of all, this is the third video in our series that is covering different prospects from the 2019 NBA draft class. We have done videos on Zion Williamson and Sekou Doumbouya so far. This is the third video in that series, so make sure to subscribe to see more content from this series, as well as a lot of content we will be doing going into this upcoming NBA season. Anyways, let's get right to it. This is a player who, I'm just going to be completely honest, I had never even heard of until July, and he wasn't even on my original top 100 big board that I made immediately after the 2018 NBA draft. But once I heard about this kid, started watching his highlights, and started doing more research on his game, good golly gee willikers, this is a player who is going to be a hot name over the next 9 months, and he is going to be very well known in NBA fan circles by the time the draft comes around. I think as long as he stays healthy and continues to progress, I believe that he will be a lottery pick next year, and if everything goes right, I think he could be a top 6 to 10 pick in the 2019 NBA draft. So enter Ja Morant out of Murray State University. So not a lot of fans have heard of this guy yet, but let me tell you something right now. This is an extremely unique player with a skill set that is unmatched by any other point guard prospect in this upcoming draft class. I am absolutely amazed watching his highlights. This is a player with a basketball IQ that is very, very unusual for a young point guard prospect his age. Ja Morant is a player who was clearly overlooked in high school but is making the absolute most of his time at Murray State. This is a player who does have a lot of areas of his game he needs to continue to work on, but that being said, the upside with Mr. Morant is absolutely enormous. If he continues to progress, he could be as high as the #6 overall NBA pick in the 2019 NBA draft. A mid-major stud muffin. Again, not a lot of NBA fans or even NBA draft fans have heard of this guy yet, but he is starting to gain just a little bit of traction, and I am going to give 3 reasons in this video why I think Ja Morant is in a very good position to be the #1 overall point guard prospect in the 2019 NBA draft. Let's get right to it. The #1 reason I think Ja Morant is the #1 overall point guard prospect is his all-around game is absolutely unmatched by any other point guard prospect in this class. This is a player who averaged 13 points a game, 7 rebounds a game, and 6 assists a game as a freshman point guard who was just 18 years old. And 2 of these players are Jason Kidd and Penny Hardaway, so he's in really good company. 5 of the 7 players who have matched these stats were NBA players, including Denzel Valentine, Kyle Collinsworth, who played for Dallas last year, Kyle Anderson, who currently plays for my Memphis Grizzlies, and then 2 players I've never heard of named Tony Lee and Gerald Lewis also matched these stats as well, but I'm sure they were stud muffins too. But either way, Ja Morant is an elite company. He was able to match the stats that Jason Kidd and Penny Hardaway put up in college as a freshman. That speaks volumes. His defense is nice too. The stats aren't going to completely jump out at you, but watching him play, he makes some ridiculous defensive plays, and you can tell that his IQ is absolutely there. He has length too, so there is a lot of room for him to grow in the defensive area of his game. And he has good size at 6'3", 175 pounds. If this was a player who was 6'5" or 6'6" with the skill set he had, I think he would have been a lottery pick in the 2018 NBA draft, honestly. But he uses his 6'3" size well, and he clearly has a high basketball IQ with low-key, very nice athleticism. And what also helps Ja Morant's draft stock is he was very young for a freshman last year, so he's essentially the age of a college freshman still right now. For comparison's sake, he's actually only 3 weeks older than Cameron Reddish, who is an incoming freshman to Duke, who many consider a surefire lottery pick, if not top 5 pick. So he basically put up these stats that matched Penny Hardaway and Jason Kidd last year at the age of a high school senior. In the big picture, this upcoming season, he is still going to be a teenager, and as long as he stays free of the injury bug and continues to progress, I think Ja Morant is going to be a scorching hot name in the coming months. The number 2 reason I think Ja Morant is the best point guard prospect in the 2019 NBA draft is quite simply the lack of competition. This is not a top-heavy point guard class. I looked at multiple mock drafts, and there is not a single mock draft on the internet that is well known that has a point guard going in the top 20 right now. Quentin Grimes out of Kansas is a highly regarded prospect. He could be a lottery pick. That being said, he's kind of a combo guard. Don't really know if he's a point guard or a shooting guard yet. He is a talented player, but just from an early perspective, this honestly could be one of the weakest point guard classes in terms of overall depth in NBA draft history. That being said, that could change. A lot can change over the next 9 months. So here's how the point guard class looks right now. Ja Morant, of course. Then you've got Darius Garland, the freshman coming into Vanderbilt. I really like Darius Garland. I think that he has nice playmaking. I do think that his offensive scoring needs work, but if his offensive scoring proves to match his playmaking, he could be a hot name as well. I do like his game. Then you've got Jalen Hands out of UCLA, who has a lot to improve. Ashton Hagans could low-key be nice out of Kentucky. Quentin Grimes, of course, who we mentioned earlier, who's sort of a combo guard. We don't know if he's a point guard yet. Wendell Wigginton and Carson Edwards, who I absolutely believe are great college players, but we're not completely sure about how they're going to transition to the NBA game yet. Trey Jones, Tyus Jones' younger brother, who I think could be nice, just maybe overshadowed by the other NBA talent on that Duke team. And then there's a few sleepers as well that are freshmen. Andrew Nembhard from the University of Florida, who's coming out of Canada. I think he low-key could be nice. I think Javonte Smart going into LSU has nice size. He could be nice. And I also really like Michael DeVoe out of Georgia Tech. He was a top 50 high school senior last year. I think he has nice size. I think he has nice game. I think he's a player who could move up draft boards depending on how he plays. He was overlooked because he was on RJ Barrett's high school team, but I think for Georgia Tech, he could be really good as well. But overall, I think Ja Morant is a better NBA prospect than any of these other point guards right now. None of these point guards have the combination of the size, the athleticism, and the defensive potential to go along with the playmaking that Ja Morant has. The overall point is this is not a top-heavy point guard class, and I think the door is extremely wide open for a little bit of an unknown prospect like Ja Morant to jump onto that #1 point guard spot. Finally, my number 3 reason I think Ja Morant is the #1 point guard in the 2019 NBA draft class right now is his overall potential. This is an extremely unique player, and there is not a single other player like him in this draft class. The only high major school to take a look at him was South Carolina, and he's from South Carolina, so that was obviously really exciting for him at the time. But this is definitely a unique personality, because even though South Carolina recruited him very heavily to stay in state, he actually chose Murray State over South Carolina. This wasn't a situation where South Carolina had another player and sort of backed off. South Carolina wanted to have this kid, and he chose to go to mid-major Murray State anyways. And he said that he went to Murray State because of the family atmosphere and that they really wanted him and thought they could change their program. And that has obviously worked out really well for Murray State so far. They made the NCAA tournament last year. And the big positive aspect was in that NCAA tournament game, he actually held his own against Jevon Carter, who is now in the NBA and was by far the best defensive point guard in college basketball last year. He put up 14 points on 5 of 10 shooting against a guy guarding him that is just an absolute defensive monster and was a 22-year-old senior. That is very impressive. And the door is also wide open at Murray State for him to prove himself next year. He is absolutely going to get more opportunities. Murray State's top scorer, Jonathan Stark, who was a senior and averaged 21 points a game, he is now gone as he graduated. So the best 2 players on the team now are Ja Morant and Terrell Miller Jr., who was also a freshman last year, and he put up 15 points and 8 rebounds a game on 40% three-point shooting. Low key, he could actually end up being an NBA prospect too if he continues to progress, because that is very impressive for a freshman. So these two sophomore stud muffins combined with the other nice pieces on their team, I think Murray State not only could be a dangerous team next year, but obviously I think Ja Morant is going to get more offensive scoring opportunities, and he is going to have every chance in the world to continue progressing. And the big thing is, watching his highlights, there's just something really unusual about watching him. His athleticism to go along with his high basketball IQ is very impressive. He is extremely adept to finishing around the basket. He had multiple games with 10 plus assists last year as an 18-year-old freshman, as one of the youngest freshmen in all of America, and he is one of the most fun players for me to watch out of all of the prospects. There are areas of his game that do need to improve. The biggest red flag for me right now watching his game, similar to Sekoyo Doumbouya's big red flag, is his shooting motion absolutely needs a lot of work. And quite simply, the 31% three-point shooting percentage has to improve. If that stagnates, Ja Morant's draft stock likely will too. This is a player who puts in the work. As long as that three-point shooting percentage gets up to at least 34-35%, showing that he can progress, I think all will be good, because the other areas of his game are already there. He has good court vision. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He has nice size. He's a good rebounder. He's shown that he is extremely good at scoring in the paint for a 6'3" freshman. So if Ja Morant stays healthy, if Ja Morant continues to progress in the areas of his game that are already excellent, and if he can improve his three-point shot, that is the biggest X factor for me right now. Ja Morant absolutely needs to improve his three-point shot, but if he can do that, I think his draft stock will catapult into the top 10 overall, and I think this player right now is the #1 point guard prospect in the 2019 NBA draft. As I said, the door is wide open for Ja Morant to take that #1 point guard spot, and I think that Ja Morant will take that #1 point guard spot. I'm really excited to see what Mr. Morant can do next season. I am more intrigued by him as a prospect than any other Division I college basketball player. His body absolutely needs to develop too. He's listed at 175 pounds right now, although he was listed at 160 pounds in high school, so that means that he's gained weight. Ideally for the NBA, you'd like to see him get up to at least 185, 190 pounds, so he's likely going to need to put on some weight, but again, keep in mind he just turned 19 years old. He has time to do that. But it is extremely unusual to see a point guard prospect that has the all-around game that Ja Morant has. Honestly, watching his highlights, he looks a little bit like a mini Russell Westbrook at times. I'm not saying he's anywhere close to Russell Westbrook's level, but if he can continue to progress, I do believe his ceiling is a Russell Westbrook type player down the line. Thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Flynn Patrick. We will be back with more content shortly.